Today we find out if Michelangelo as the Mummy is actually the best one that they've made in this series. Welcome to the channel, I'm Jonathan, and we're gonna be checking out Michelangelo as the Mummy, and we're gonna look at details, articulation, and see how many poses we can get. Let's get into it.
Michelangelo as the Mummy. So let's check out the box. Of course, on the side, if we've seen any of the other boxes, you get these same figures just in a different order depending on who you have will be on top. The side, the back, where all the good stuff is. And on the bottom, all of the callouts for all the important people that put a lot of work into this. And one I always like to call out, the illustration. That is because the cover art of this monster series, that's an illustration. That is not a shot of the figure as you often see with other NECA boxes. Those are figure shots, front artwork. Of course, on the inside, another shot of the figure, and then you get all of the detail pieces very clear to see from the box here. But because of the glare, let's go ahead and open it up and see what we got. There we go, everything in the package, of course. The ties on this one are gonna be the kind of standard for most of the turtle figures. Every once in a while you'll see something that's like a twist tie, but this is the more expected style. Again, with these, you can actually kind of pull them out, put them through the hole, and keep them intact. It takes a little bit of work, and if you ever want to put them back in the box, either just for storage or for shipping or something, or maybe you sell your figures a little later on, you want to kind of preserve their experience of unboxing, you can use tweezers and you can get these back through. I even managed to do that on Usagi Yojimbo, which was probably one of the most complicated figures to get out of the box. All right, so we'll get him out of the package here. We're gonna do an overview of the figure and all the accessories. Then we'll jump into the details, articulation, and posing. And it's one of the easiest to get the accessories out of. This plastic wasn't even taped in. Everything fell out. The snake and the extra bandanas have a piece of tape here. So let's get into an overview of the figure itself. There's Mikey. What you get in the box, this big old snake. You get his two nunchucks, two hands additionally per side, two extra straps to just toss on. The famous terrifying face figure itself looks like it's fully loaded with details. So on that note, let's jump into details. All right, so into the details. And this figure, much like the April O'Neil as the Bride of Frankenstein. If you haven't watched that, be sure to go check that video out. The details from this monster series are just spectacular. So far, between Mikey and April, I gotta say that this monster series is just beyond the expectations from standard NECA figures, which, I mean, generally have a lot of details, but they really put the extra work in, put the extra time in, and came back with something that is just next level and beyond expectations. And you could see that down to every piece of this figure alone. It's just endless. The more you get into it, the more you stare at it, the more detail pieces you find. So with the extra head, I mean, look at that. And of course, if you have ever seen the original costumes and when they came out of storage, I think for an auction to be sold, it was very much like this, and we'll put that up right here. Of course, as you would expect, the bandana, it moves. You can remove it, so if you want to switch with the other head, you certainly can. But just absolutely terrifying level of detail. I mean, that's essentially like a punched-in hole on the top. The teeth. So, as we said, you get additional hands. So these two, of course, are the same shape. It's just one for each side, and then obviously you can just kind of mix and match. So the hands shapes, what you're getting here, the level of detail. Again, even in something like the hands, they took the time. And the fists, which are the same, they mirror each other. And these additional straps, which you can wrap around his legs or his arms or neck, We'll play around with that and see what we can do there, but even the detail in that fabric, the paint, textures, even the touch has like a nice kind of dry texture, a little rough feeling. Nunchucks, which are inspired as the character to be Egyptian, and the snake. Now, there is, as you would expect with these kinds of holes in toys or figures you've ever seen like this, there is a bit of a metal piece in there, as you can see. The light's hitting it there, so you can bend it and have whatever shape you would want out of the snake, which is a really nice touch. Instead of just being a static kind of hard plastic, you can get whatever shape you want out of this thing. So you can wrap it around Mikey, you can have it on its own. So let's start talking about articulation. So the head, the bandana here, you can spin it around just as the other. It can be removed. Like I said, you could swap it out with the other headband if you needed to, but articulation of the head, so actually pretty fantastic on looking down. The upward look, really not bad considering the shell hitting the back of the head. Some nice motion there. The neck itself is on a joint, so you have the head on a ball joint, the neck, which I guess is another ball joint. So not only are you getting head movement, which is really some of the best, you're getting neck motions, which is really going to help make up that difference. You could kind of give him a lurching forward on the neck and have the head. So it's great. Of course, you can spin it around. It is a ball joint. There's nothing really blocking you from doing that. The arms, they don't go all the way back, mostly, I mean, really just because of hitting the shell. Now you could pull him, you could use like kind of this angle joint to get it to go around. You just can't have it straight with his body. So of course, same thing on this side, just pull it out a little bit. Otherwise, you can have some really great articulation there in the shoulders. The elbows, much like with the other turtle figures, they are double jointed. So a joint here, but then the pad itself does stop you from getting like full motion in that. But when you consider what you're getting out of this figure, otherwise, those double elbows really help get some nice motion. So forearm has rotation, which is good. It's a little tight just because of it's kind of cut at an angle, but you can rotate the forearm. Nothing there in the upper half. That's okay. So the elbows you could have totally backwards. So the rotation here, rotation in the forearm itself, rotation in the wrist, and then the wrist has some pretty good articulation. Nothing too far upward as far as the back of the hand going up. That's about it, but you can go down pretty well. As far as side to side movement, really nothing. So rotation and then up and really just kind of a down motion. Yeah, so that's interesting. On the left hand, you really can't get the hand to bend backwards. On the right hand, you can have it at a 90-degree angle. Of course, with that big old shell, he's not gonna have any kind of twisting around the waist. And it doesn't seem to have that kind of articulation that if you have the movie figures, that they have this kind of full body articulation in the shell area, and that is not happening here. But, you know, I think it's okay. It doesn't bother me at all. The legs, so ball joints on the legs, which is fantastic. You're gonna get some of the best movement from this kind of joint. There are NECA figures that have kind of hinge points with little locking tabs, and those kind of suck, and I imagine eventually get worn out and don't stay in place. It would be interesting to see the long life of a ball joint though, because that might just become like a loose issue as well. So backwards, that's actually really good considering the leg. Forward, I mean, it does push it out to the side, but you can get it straight up. Now this is fantastic. That, I would say, is 100% Van Damme approved. All right, so the knees, like the elbows and like other movie figures of the Turtles, are gonna be double jointed. Again, limited by the padding on the knee, but you can still get some pretty good articulation out of it, even with that padding. Those double joints really help out a lot. So you could have him kneeling down, and thanks to the ankles having really good articulation, you could potentially get him propped up. We'll see if we can do that. Then forward. The legs do have a very straight down appearance. If you lock the joints, you can actually kind of get the bottom out a little bit more. So it's kind of, this would be 100%, you get like 103% or something. The ankles, so as we saw, the ankles are going to be full articulation as we might expect out of a figure like the Turtles, if you have experienced them before. So kind of a weird rotation hinge point, but the up and down. What else could you ask for in an ankle? So that's the articulation. Let's get into posing. There you have it with Mikey in all of his incredible posing. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more you can do than just what I put out there. The biggest question is which head is the best head? Because this, I think, is the best pose you can do because it's just a classic mummy look. And it, like I said, it comes down to which head do you think is best? Do we go with that iconic look from the costumes that we saw earlier? Or do we go with this kind of one-eyed Mikey? So let me know down in the comments. I would love to know which head you prefer. I think it's a no-brainer when it comes to details on this Michelangelo. We have to do a 5 out of 5. It's just too good to give it anything less. The articulation, while there is a little bit of lacking parts in the wrist, the pads on the knees and elbows kind of cause some limitations. I think for the figure that it is, you can really get a lot out of this guy. The full Van Damme splits, considering everything that we got here, I'm gonna give him a 5 out of 5 on articulation. The posing, like I said, you can get a lot. I showed some examples. There's a lot more than what I could do. I would love to see what everybody else has got going on out there. But the posing, again, I'm gonna give him a 5 out of 5. So that's a perfect score for April. That's a perfect score for Mikey. And I don't think I'll ever take that back. I can't wait to unbox and rate the other figures from this series. They're just too perfect. Go out there, get yours if you can. So there we have it. Michelangelo as the Mummy. There are the scores and the overall rating. This is definitely one you want to get out on your shelf. And I think we all have to admit that even if you're not into the monster series, the detail is just spectacular. And if you made it this far, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another video. We'll see you next time.